Huh. So is everybody waiting on me to get my stuff together?
Don't worry, take your time. I can begin the session now. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining DataCon LA 2021. Welcome to Data Infrastructure and Security. My name is Hestia, your host, and your co-host today is Idris. We will be moderating the chat and QA for you during the session. Today we have our guest, Sky Cassidy, CEO of MountainTop Data and host of the If You Market podcast. And he will be talking about the balance between data privacy and user experience. Sky Cassidy is the CEO of MountainTop Data and host of the If You Market podcast. He grew up in rural Northern California and moved to Los Angeles in 2002, where he spent a decade in sales and marketing trenches and dabbled in Southern California startup scene. In 2016, he took over as CEO of one of those startups, MountainTop Data, uh, a provider of list and data services for B2B marketing. He is a problem solver and thinker and enjoys breaking things down, cleaning them out, and building them back up. He loves to talk about business, science, and philosophy, and believes that 2 plus 2 is somewhere between 3 and 5. He is also an amateur color commentator for dart, ping pong, and rock paper scissors tournament. Without further ado, I'll hand this over to the speaker. Thanks for being here, Sky.
Thank you for having me. It's always weird to hear yourself introduced. And then hearing the things saying, where did all this come from? Oh, yeah. Okay, I remember that stuff. All right. So without further ado, I'll jump right into the topic. I have a lot to get through, and I want to encourage everybody to ask questions as we go. I'm used to, from the podcast I host, a very back and forth style of talking. So don't jump in and just speak, but I think you can put questions into the chat. And if you do, I'll try to address them as we're going along. But I do have a bit to go through here. And without further ado, let's get started. So the topic today is the balance between data privacy and user experience. But the main point that I'm going to be driving home here is that you don't own your data. And it sounds pretty bad on the surface, but don't worry, it'll get better. And also, yes, that is an intentional you're there. You don't own, you are data. So let me give you a quick overview, and that'll make a little more sense. We've got 3 major topics I'm going to be covering. First, you don't own your data, and then the balance between data privacy and user experience. And then, but you do own your data. So 2 different types of data I'm kind of classifying there for your and your. Yes, very fun and clever of me. But let's get into the content here. Again, main point, you don't own your data. And basically, recently, I've been running this company for a couple of years, a data company. So I think about data all the time. And there's been a lot more talk about data privacy over the last couple of years. And it just keeps growing and growing. And I came to the realization through yelling at family members about posting pictures of their lunch everywhere they went and stuff like that, that we don't own our data. Once we put the information out there, it's out there. And you're looking at things like GDPR and stuff like that. And part of my job is to think about these data privacy laws and what's happening and what's coming. And I just came to the realization that people want to think they own, and there's this you own your information pushes and stuff like that even, and it's very righteous, but it's wrong. You don't actually own your data. That's not all encompassing. It's like any law. You have rights, but they stop where other people's rights start. And then there's a way within society that we all behave and get along. So you have some rights to some data, but it's limited, and it doesn't supersede other people's rights as well. And so I've probably angered a lot of you by talking about this, and people are thinking, okay, this guy's evil. He's telling us as the owner of a data company that we don't own information about ourselves. So let me see if I can win you back a little bit. This is my puppy, Jagger. And I take Jagger out on walks, and we go around our neighborhood. So typically we head out the front door, we go down the driveway, and I'm going to give, this is like an analogy, but it's also directly about data. We go down the driveway. Immediately I haven't trimmed my hedges recently. I'm not doing a good job with the yard work. I also see my neighbors across the street have a second Breaking Bad style mobile home. They parked now directly in front of my house to mirror the one in front of their house. And then I start walking down the street. I see, the couple houses down, families out there. They've got their new 3-year-old. We say hi, greet each other, keep walking with the dog. A couple houses down more, new motorcycle in the driveway. They've got some yard work going on. They're bringing down a tree in the yard. I'm seeing all this stuff going on in my neighborhood. I meet some people in the corner with their dogs, talk to them. Hi, I'm so-and-so. I live down there. Oh, I live over here. Dogs' names, all this. So this is, and I'm not going to go all the way around the block. Don't worry. I'll stop it there at the first corner. But basically, when we go out in society, outside of our homes, we are constantly spreading information about ourselves and collecting information about others. And that's how social beings work. We share information. We put that information out there publicly with an understanding that other people are putting their information out publicly, and that's how we trust each other, and that's how we work with each other, and that's how societies work. So that's why you don't own your information. You don't. It's just part of the, I'll get into those details a little more. But anyway, so we constantly gather information unless you decide you don't want to put out certain information about yourself. People do all kinds of things. We have hermits, you have the lone wolf, that wants to have nobody know anything about him and live off in the woods. We don't think very highly of that person. So we've got our lone wolf here. All right. Lone wolf is great, but social life forms don't survive as lone wolves. Even solitary animals exchange information. They're very social. They put themselves out there. It's just not possible to not share information. And so it shouldn't be, it's basically like just a natural state of how things happen. So we share information. That's what we do. And in preparing for the speech today, I saw a little blurb, so I threw it in here. And it says, we use communication to share information, comment, ask questions, express wants and needs, develop social relationships, social etiquette. The word social keeps showing up. I disagree with this statement in that I think it should be rearranged. It should really say we share information. So everything is just information. There's different types of information for different things. So we use communication as kind of limiting. We share information. That's what we do as humans. And that brings me back to the lone wolf. Lone wolves are stupid. Lone wolves are dead wolves. Lone wolves are the guy in the cabin in the woods telling everybody else they don't want to be part of the pack that keeps them alive, that brings prosperity to everybody. Maybe they're really worried about their data privacy, so they're going to go off and be a lone wolf, but lone wolves are dead wolves. The wolf that's too worried that somebody might know what its butt smells like doesn't survive. It goes off on its own and dies somewhere. So exchanging information is basically how societies work. As humans, we get to decide what information we want to share, how much of it we want to share. That's the control, the main control, I would say, that we have over that kind of stuff. So information sharing is in our nature. But how do we get to this place where we see it as a bad thing? What happened that now, we're having this data privacy argument all of a sudden? Well, that's where we get to social media. And I mean, there's lots of other things, and I'm kind of limiting here. I am talking here on a perspective kind of within the marketing realm. I know the word data, I really hate the word data. It's a pronoun. It means so many different things. What kind of data are we talking about? I'm really talking about people's personal data here, type of stuff, the kind of things that GDPR law would cover. So I believe that the data privacy push, the push to own our information, is really nothing more than a backlash to the social media and the con that they pulled on everybody with data. Con here stands the data con. We're at data con, but this is the data con as in conference, I'm sorry, as in confidence, not conference. So this is the building confidence, and that's what really social media companies all did. They said, hey, look at this. It's great. We're going to give you this for free. Yay, everybody's happy. I'm sure everybody remembers the Facebook days when they said, we don't have ads and we never will. That was one of their big initial selling pitches. But basically Google as well, they all gained our confidence before they started to monetize our data. They all gained our confidence, and by giving us this stuff and telling us everything was going to be great. There's nothing to worry about. This is just free. Yay. Well, now when you go on Facebook, it's nothing but ads. They're all about ads and targeting. When you go on Google and you search for something, you have to get to the second page sometimes to even see a search result and not an ad. Everything is ads. And it makes me wonder with these companies, I really wonder how early they knew what they were going to become. How early was it? Did Facebook know? Was it just a model of, hey, then once we have a bunch of people, then we can put ads on and make money? Or did they know they were going to monetize the data in the way they had? At some point, they knew they were going to do that, but I would love to know how early they knew they were going to do that. So what's important here is that being conned isn't the same as willfully giving your information away. So just because you gave your information to somebody doesn't mean, hey, you put it out there, it's public now, they own it. No, I would say when you con something out of somebody, that's still a violation. So I'm not here saying this is the Wild West and hey, you put it out there, everything's just out there, nothing you can do, anybody can do anything they want with anything. No, there are still limitations and rules, but it's very important to distinguish between being conned and just giving your information away. Now we all know what's going on. So when you're giving that information away now, you're giving it away. It's no longer a con, really. So you don't own your data, but it's not that cut and dry, basically. What I would say happened here with the social media companies is they violated a good faith clause of society. And the unfortunate result has been that there's this big push for overreaching data privacy laws, in my opinion. I think they've gone way too far. So what happens is everybody gets scared and people overreact. And then you get this society where people think we should all be Guy Pearce Memento. And really what that ends up highlighting, and I apologize if you haven't seen Memento, the guy has no memory, so he keeps having to not be able to remember anything. What ends up happening there is it kind of shows with the Memento as an analogy that we collect information as humans, as social beings. It's what we do. If you remember the movie Memento, he ends up tattooing stuff on his body because he can't remember. He has to have this information about his surroundings so he knows how to act and what to do. People find a way. Animals find a way. All social beings find a way. That's what we do. And ultimately, a big point here is you don't own your data, and that's not wrong. That's actually how societies work. Trying to own it really messes things up. Trying to let people, the right to be forgotten is, maybe the details, there's some good points in there, but ultimately the bumper sticker, it's a terrible idea. You cannot tell somebody they have to forget you. It just doesn't work that way. There are companies out there kind of trying to take advantage of this. I've had a couple on the If You Market podcast, and I've poised this kind of angle to them. But so there are companies saying like, oh, look, you have social media and they're violating your data here. That's bad. So what we're going to do is we're going to create this go-between where everybody gives us their data and then the social media companies access it from us. And then you can own your data within our infrastructure, and you can manage what these companies can access and not. And it sounds good. And there are some models that I think could be good. My concern is it sounds like somebody is seeing a loophole possibly around data privacy laws that they can monetize, or just seeing something they can monetize out of the fear of data privacy laws or people's fear and saying, oh, look, big bad social media company doesn't have your info. I do. Now they have to pay me, of course, to access it because we have to make money. So they're basically saying we might be able to insert ourselves in as a middleman here to help give them some cover to say like, oh, no, we don't have your data. We're not, these guys have it. We just pay them for it now. And they can, so you can trust us. You can't, they still have all the same stuff. It really just seems potentially something to keep an eye on. Those kind of companies, they seem to be coming into vogue, and I'm worried that it's an unnecessary business created out of unnecessary data privacy laws. So now I'm getting into the kind of nuances of owning your data. It can be difficult to tell what's going on with data and data privacy and owning and stuff out there. And is a company legitimate that you're giving the data to? Do they need this data, or are they just using, going to sell it and whatnot? When people talk about companies harvesting your data, is it a big conspiracy or is it real? What's going on? There are some constants, though, that you can rely on. And I would say, one, you don't own your data. That's a constant. Don't worry about it. You can't tell your neighbors to forget your name. You can tell them, but they can't even forget if they want to. And also that public information isn't private. Once you put the information out there, again, you don't own it. And so this brings me to the social contract and data, and then non-disclosure agreements. And again, there are limits on this stuff. So the social contract and data, here I'm talking about the social contract as the moral and political philosophy developed in the Middle Ages, Age of Enlightenment, Age of Enlightenment, and not about social media. This word social and data keep popping up in different contexts. Sorry about that. So anyway, the word social is really important here because the social contract is about understanding how we interact and essentially the necessity and the lack of absolute freedoms in social societies. The social contract basically said, here's what you give up. Here's what's necessary for you to give up if you want to live in the pack. You have to abide by the pack rules to some degree. People are going to know who you are and all that kind of stuff. And there's some freedoms. You don't have absolute freedom. That is anarchy. So I've taken the social contract, and I deal with a lot of contracts in my business. And I said, okay, contracts have a lot of these little parts to them, right? So let's go ahead and say, for data's sake, let's add a licensing agreement and a non-disclosure to the social contract. And like all contracts, my theoretical social contract would have this licensing agreement and non-disclosure agreement. And then think about it this way. If you consider everything about you since before you were born as part of this social contract licensing agreement, you have the non-exclusive worldwide license to everything about you. Non-exclusive worldwide license. But this also includes a non-disclosure agreement. And once something is made public, it's public. Everyone has the same non-exclusive worldwide license to all public information. So yes, your information is private until you make it public. When your parents post those baby pictures, now they're out there. They've been put out there. They've said, we are giving this into the worldwide non-exclusive information license. So this isn't an information Wild West. I do want to keep coming back to that. I'm not saying everything is free everywhere to use any way you want. I'm just saying here's where the nuance, again, is really important. Here's where I think the lines need to be drawn and how people should be thinking about this so we don't overreach and cause problems, create whole businesses that are unnecessary, that are really just exploiting data where it shouldn't be. So there are rational limits to this kind of thing, and the social contract is this philosophical thing, but there are boundaries. And even with public information, there are things you can't do with it. Even if you have the information, there are things you can't do with it. You can't violate someone's other rights. Just because you get somebody's social security number doesn't mean you can do what you want with it. Identity theft still exists. You can't steal somebody's money just because you know the account number now. That there are still other laws. Having the data doesn't give you, again, the right to do anything with it. So you have to consider how you get the information and how you use the information. So, for example, and I love using photos, and this one I will not, because I'm going to talk about the Kardashians. So, don't go full Kardashian if you're worried about your data privacy. And then expect to be able to pull it back and be like, oops, I don't want that out there. No, you put it out there. It's out there. You don't have the right to be forgotten. It just doesn't exist. There may be laws that are passed that force things that maybe shouldn't happen, but force people to take stuff down. I'm fine with you being able to say, hey, can you take this down, please? And companies should take that down. They don't have to. I don't like laws that say they have to, though. And an individual private citizen, you can't say, hey, you can't have this thing that I put out publicly anymore. Again, you can't remember my name, neighbor, because I don't like you. No, you're not allowed to do that. So on the other hand, you have the Kardashians. On the other hand, you have somebody like Hulk Hogan, another sex tape put out. What happens with that? Well, it was, I don't remember the details actually on that, but it was improperly acquired or improperly used, or I believe it was improperly acquired. And so a whole media company went bankrupt, disappeared, because it didn't matter. They had the data. That you can't just put it out there because that's private information. It was stolen, basically. You did not get the license in a way. So you do own your data, but there are still natural rules and boundaries is the point. The nuances really matter when it comes to data. And this takes me to kind of the reason we collect information. So obviously somebody wants Hulk Hogan's sex tape so they can show it and make a bunch of money. Okay. They don't bother to license it from him. They just think, hey, we got it so we can air it and make money. Well, you're put out of business then. Good. The system worked. But there are many things that can be done with personal information. One of the most popular and kind of the one we're focusing on here is marketing. That's one of the biggest reasons we gather information. I know AI is a huge topic here in the conference as well, but marketing is a very big one. And that's kind of the balance between marketing and data privacy topic here. But so marketers want to know as much as they can about people so they can pitch the right products to the right person in the right place at the right time. Like the more you know, the more you can get these things right, and the higher your likelihood of getting the sale. And that's where the data privacy and user experience comes up. And that's where I've got another kind of off topic or out of the norm take on this. And that is this balance between data privacy and user experience that is a big topic among marketers and some segments of the data industry. I think is BS. There is no balance between data privacy and user experience because you don't own your information. Basically, the only balance and the real issues companies have figuring out is what's the necessary information for us to have to provide the best user experience. Now, there's still data issues that come in and data privacy issues that come in there, but it isn't really a balance like, oh, do we have too much information, not enough? We want to provide a good user experience, but on the other hand, we can't get any. No, get all the information you can on the people. Of course, legally, you can't install secret cameras in their house or something like that, but get all the information you can to provide the best user experience possible, because everything that's public is public. Or everything they will give you in order to provide you a better user experience. I've used an analogy before, when people go into their local tavern, imagine the show Cheers, and like maybe half of the audience knows what Cheers is, but imagine Norm walking into the bar, but the bartender isn't allowed to remember his name. How good is that user experience? It's terrible. You can't have Cheers if every time somebody walks in a bar, the bartender knows nothing about you. You're an absolute stranger every time. You want them to know that information about you. So we volunteer a lot of information to the companies that provide us services so they can give us better service. The restaurant, you have to tell them what you want to eat so they can give you the food you want instead of just bringing out something random. That guy looks like a chili relleno guy. Okay, we'll bring him that. You have to exchange information to get a better service. And companies nowadays want to preload that better service as much as they can. And that's where I say there is no balance. It's all the information you can get as a marketer to provide the best service possible. There's a dating analogy here as well. So here's where it gets weird though. Yes, you want all the information possible, but you have to think about it as a sociologist kind of as well, in that today's day and age, the more data you have on somebody, great. But if if they know you have that information and how you're using it, it can creep them out. Then they don't want to work with you. So imagine sales and marketing dating analogies are just everywhere. Really works well here though. Guy goes into a bar, sees a girl. Oh, it looks like the kind of girl that I want to talk to. Goes over, talks to her. Hey, what's your name? Blah, blah, blah. Where are you from? They start talking back and forth. Great. Now a marketer goes into that bar. He sees a girl. He already knows her name. He already knows where she lives, knows what she does, knows what her income is, knows her dog's name, knows what her favorite color is, where she likes to eat, favorite foods, everything he could possibly gather about her. Now, if he goes up to her and uses all that information, he's going to freak her out. That's not, a guy who's smart and wants to provide her a better experience. That's a stalker. And that is not going to get the best response. So that's where I see the balance being. You have to not freak people out. There's a famous, Target had a famous incident where they were using purchasing information to send everybody different. Those in the mail, you get the little printout with all the stuff they're selling in the store and their deals and stuff like that, right? And this was a while back when all this analytics stuff was first starting out. They were doing great at it, and they would figure out from what you bought what you might be interested in. And then you would get a different printout in the mail than your neighbor would based on your purchasing history and stuff. And so this dad got really mad at Target because they were sending his, I don't remember her age, maybe 16-year-old daughter or something like that. Just all baby stuff. And he's pissed. Why are you sending my underage daughter all this stuff about cribs and baby bottles and diapers and stuff like that? Well, it turned out before he knew his daughter was pregnant, Target did, based on the stuff she'd been purchasing. And that was an example of them going too far with targeting. Really good targeting job. She probably was interested in those products, but when you target too far, it creeps people out. And you don't want to creep people out with your marketing. So you can still use the information. You just have to be subtle in a way that you don't creep them out. You just provide a better experience. And that's where the balance actually comes in. Okay. So let me have a drink here. Okay, let's get to wrapping this up. GDPR. I do want to mention GDPR real quick. I hate GDPR. I think GDPR got it way wrong. The biggest, I think California Consumer Protection Act, the CCPA is a very good law. It has a great balance in there. It allows people to say, hey, what information do you have? And please stop using my information. But what GDPR really does wrong, and there's a lot of interpretations of GDPR out there, but in my opinion, it removes the ability for you to have an opt-out list. There's a lot of interpretations of it, but GDPR says someone can say, or not even say, the default setting is you can't have any of my information. You can't even have information saying don't have information on this person. So again, you turn back into the aforementioned Memento. Imagine him being a door-to-door salesperson in Europe with GDPR, and every time he goes and knocks on a door, he's not allowed to remember that person told him 10 minutes ago, I'm not interested, leave me alone. Can't put him on an opt-out. So he just keeps coming back to the same door over and over. Like, oh, great law. Nice. Don't let us remember the people who told us to leave them alone. And to me, that's, again, the overreach of them saying the default setting is anti-capitalism. You're not allowed to know anything about somebody unless they specifically opt in for you to know it. I think it's ridiculous. So data privacy, user experience there. Boom. Let's move on to the dark side of the force and the light side of the force. I see people collecting data for kind of two main purposes: help make better survival decisions and be a more valued member of society. And one of those functions is really how you interact with others, the customer experience you provide them would fall under the valued member of society there. Ultimately, though, when everybody owns the data and nobody owns the data, a lot of it comes down to intent and use. All of it comes down to intent and use. If you go back to my earlier analogy or my earlier story of walking the dog, I could be out walking the dog. Yeah. and meeting my neighbors and having a good time, or I might be casing the neighborhood to see what houses I want to rob. It's the same walking the dog. It's the same information I'm gathering by walking around. It's all out there available. So it's really, it's the same force. How do you want to use it is what it comes down to. So, and that takes us to where it goes wrong. Where does data go wrong? Well, I think data really goes wrong, and people, there's two main areas. One is the intentional violation of data privacy, of people's actual, stealing people's data, real thing. You can, hack into systems and steal credit card numbers and social security numbers and all that kind of stuff. That does not fall under the "you don't own your data" title. So you have people and companies that feel threatened, basically, and then you have probably even the larger section is people who feel like if they're not first, they're last, and companies. So they're going to do anything to be on top and be as big as possible. The rules don't really matter because they're afraid they won't be number one. So all ethics go out the window when you're afraid of your survival, even if it's illogical, even if you are number one and you're just afraid you're not number one enough. You're willing to do anything to continue surviving or growing. That's a major data problem because, again, they're willing to do anything. They violate the ethics laws with data. They con people out of their data, that kind of stuff. This isn't a balance, really. It's about the use of data. I'm sorry, going back to that. It's really about minimizing friction with your customers. That's what you want all the data for if you're a good player. Now, if you're a bad player, then it's, you're a bad player. So you guys aren't bad people and you'd never do bad things with data. So we don't have to worry too much about that side, but you could still find yourself violating the rules when it comes to data. And that falls under the title of oopses. And I'm not going to play the clip here, but I had a clip from the movie The Rock. Oopses happen in a couple different ways. Most common way is things happening with data you didn't intend. You built the structure for one purpose, and then it morphs into another. Lazy programming using IDs in places you shouldn't, and then those are just still there later, and they cause hacks. So you're still liable for people's data. When they give you the information, they're making it available to you under a user agreement saying you're not going to share this publicly. When you get hacked out of incompetence, that's still a data breach. It isn't, oh, well, it's public now, so it's all cool. No. There was a data breach there. That's on you. Social security numbers, all that kind of stuff is stolen. That's a real problem. So you have oopses. You want to, let's not do that. You want to watch out for oopses as well. So you can be a bad guy, yes, but you can also have oopses. This brings me back to the down to the final point here, which is the good news. You do own your data. So you don't own your data, but you do own your data. All the data you collect from the world about anything your company collects for its marketing, for its AI, for whatever you're doing, you own that information. You may not have the unlimited, exclusive rights to it, but you own that information. So you don't own your data, but you don't own your data, but you do own your data. Cutting it pretty close here, but I think we have pretty good timing. Anybody have any questions, any concerns, anything like that?
So we have 2 minutes left, and so far we haven't had any questions, but
yeah, I see the chat. I was pretty thorough, so I think everybody was just nodding their heads and saying, yeah, good point. Wow.
Yes.
Well, Sky, we love your analogy of the lone wolf and how you get about the data privacy and your storytelling. I think it was fantastic. And
lone wolves get glamorized. People wear shirts about I'm a lone wolf. I'm like, are you an idiot? Like, why don't you just wear a Scarface shirt? That's a terrible thing to be. Why would you want to be a dead wolf? Yeah, it doesn't make any sense at all. Yeah. So I guess the big takeaway here, as I'd say, there's two type of yours in data. You own your data. And or you don't own your data. That's the data that you are. You do own your data. If anybody has any questions or any concerns or wants to yell at me, feel free to find me on LinkedIn. I think our LinkedIn and Twitter are both shared somewhere here. I'm not on Twitter. I have a profile.
Yes, it's on the list of the speakers list on DataCon LA. With that, I can end the presentation. I want to say thank you, Sky, for your presentation, and the attendees for if you have any questions, please contact him. Please start posting questions and interactions during this session. You can contact the speaker directly if there are any further questions regarding these topics through the list of this year's DataCon LA speakers. You can go to the website. Please provide your feedback using the form provided on the chat box, which I will provide soon. Thank you again, everyone, for joining today's presentation, and I hope you can gain some insights from the session. Have a wonderful day, and thank you for being part of this year's DataCon LA. Thank you again, Sky.
Thank you, Sky.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
I think I leave now. I have to figure out how. There we go. Leave button.